Monday, March 1st, 2021, 6:30 p.m. I'm calling the Board of Selectmen meeting to order. We have a fairly varied agenda tonight. I did want to make one opening comment on agenda items. I saw a note on a website earlier today, which may not really have been intended to be, a comment about our meetings, but I thought I would clarify something about it. And it said that chairs were free to take agenda items out of order. And that's not actually strictly true. So if an agenda item has a time on it, I am not free to take that agenda item up before the time that's on the agenda item. So for example, tonight we have agenda item number 4 is annual town meeting date, and it's scheduled for 7:30 p.m. If I'd finished up with other business and it wasn't 7:30 yet, I could not take that up until we got to 7:30. I could take agenda items out of order that do not have times on them. So for example, I could take the consent agenda out of order in order to fill time if I needed to. But I just wanted to make that clear in case people were making the assumption that they had to be here from the beginning of the meeting to see all of the agenda items. It's not actually strictly true. If it has a time on it, we'll not ever start before that time by law. Okay, so let's get going. First item on the agenda is outdoor dining discussion. It's going to be that time of year, and again in this ridiculous cycle that we're in. The governor has allowed restaurants to go to full capacity, but they're still required to have seating set 6 feet apart. And beyond that, I think that there's a lot of residents who are going to have concerns about going into indoor dining. So as it warms up again, we're going to be looking at the possibility of having outdoor dining again for some period of the year. We don't know how that's going to play out. So anyway, tonight is an opening discussion about what level of appetite we have for that, and what steps we would want to take as a board before making a decision on outdoor dining. We are not going to be making any decisions about whether or not we're committing to outdoor dining. That'll come at a later meeting, but we will be considering it fairly soon because it's going to warm up fairly soon. We hope. Everybody hopes, right? All right. So, Greg, do you have any other comments that you want to make? And then I'm going to go around the board asking for opinions on how we might want to go.
So just that we've had a couple of inquiries from some of the restaurants as to what our thoughts are on allowing outdoor dining again. As you mentioned, the governor has loosened up the restrictions, so restaurants can have 100% occupancy if, and it's a big if they can keep their tables 6 feet apart. So obviously many places cannot, so that in a sense is a de facto restriction still. And how things change over the next, over the next month and a half is hard to predict. But nonetheless, I would expect there'd be a fair amount of high interest from the restaurant proprietors to be able to have some outdoor dining.
All right. So, board members have any thoughts on this topic, appetite for supporting it, and how to proceed?
Yeah, Eli, I might start things off. Greg, you had inquiries. They were inquiries from the merchants or the restaurateurs, and they're interested in pursuing it in some form. I mean, were they calling because, hey, when can we do this, or are they just asking?
They were asking when we thought we might give them permission to start.
Okay, so they're looking for that, and that's in view of the liberalization of the policies that kicked in on March 1st, correct? So they know that. Did they know that at the time?
No, so their inquiries were prior to the governor's announcement end of last week.
Okay. I mean, my initial reaction is it was kind of messy. I think most people felt that it was kind of messy. I don't know what the schedule is for the state to move. I know that March 22nd, there's some other events that may occur. I don't know if it's going to affect restaurants. My initial reaction is if we can work something on the sidewalks without involving the streets, I'm all for that. If the policy becomes liberal enough that they can make ends meet that way, to jump into the streets again, it's just, yeah, it makes things look kind of tumultuous downtown. No question about it. And I prefer the sidewalk thing. If the sidewalk thing can be worked out, I'm in favor of looking at that first, but I'm curious as to what their thoughts are in view of the new policies that have been put in place, and if that can get them to break even or something.
Board members.
If I may,
Yep.
April here is not really very nice. I mean, I know we'd all like it to be nice, but it really isn't. And things are changing very fast. And I'd really prefer to put off even showing an indication of direction. I don't think that the town owes every restaurant 6 extra tables in perpetuity. If the governor changes the rules again so that it doesn't take six feet, I don't want to find us with the streets blocked and the stores upset that their customers can't get in. So I'd like to just postpone this for another couple of weeks.
Right. Other board members.
Greg, I'd like to understand whether you had heard anything from retailers, not restaurateurs.
I've not heard recently from the retailers. Obviously, there was a fair amount of concern as it extended later into the season last fall, in particular, just in terms of the competition for that parking space. So I have not heard, as I said, I haven't heard recently from them. There is a division meeting of the Chamber of Commerce coming up. I would expect this topic to come up then.
Okay. I agree with Ann that April is not necessarily great, but people were out in October, which is not necessarily great for outdoor dining either, when the system had already been set up. I mean, one thought that I have is to do something at the beginning of the season and then stop midsummer. It all depends on so many factors that have to do with the incidence of COVID, the continuation of the vaccines. I mean, frankly, I think the governor's moving a little bit quickly on opening everything up, given where we are in terms of vaccines. So I'm with Ann. I think we should wait, start to think about what kinds of plans we could make, but not implement anything until end of April.
Becky, any thoughts?
I do. I think that restaurants have been really hard hit by this, and my understanding is that retailers have had a little more time to recoup. So I would like a little more information. Previously, the governor gave guidelines for certain constraints regarding outdoor dining. Greg, is there anything at this point from the governor on that?
No, so we assume that the same rules that were in effect in last summer would be in play this spring and summer as well.
Okay,
Until
but
we hear,
nothing.
until we hear otherwise, but we haven't heard anything new.
Okay, I guess also one of my thoughts on outdoor dining is I think some of the larger restaurants, it's easier for them to I guess accommodate patrons, whereas the smaller ones have a harder time. And I don't know who's reached out to you at this point, but I would be perhaps more inclined to kind of offer the smaller venues a jump on things. But I would like to hear, I'd like to hear a little bit more from the governor on guidance on this.
Say a little bit more on the guidance. Do you mean about whether or not the state intends to continue supporting outdoor dining?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So we have a couple of ways we can go here. One is, regardless, I think we can go and ask the governor or ask the state what their plans are in terms of supporting outdoor dining again this year, to see whether or not it's an option at all. And then it seems like there's a consensus among board members that we don't necessarily want to jump right on board and go on outdoor dining. Question is, should we make any effort to go and get some more information from local businesses now, or do you want to wait? And if we do it now, how do we do that? Would we do it? Would we prefer to have a board member assigned to go and help with that process, or do we just want to let town staff send out a query? And I'll open it back up to board members.
Eli, if I may.
Yep.
I would like to get more information because if this ends up seeming something that should be acted upon, then I think it'd be good to be ready to go. And with that said, unfortunately, I'm working full time right now, so I haven't got time to scoot out, which I know, most of us are. But I would also like to get, I'd like to hear Greg's take on this.
Greg's take on this.
Take on this from the standpoint of the businesses that have reached out to him and how motivated they are.
Well, it's certainly fair to say that the restaurant owners are very motivated. They are anxious to have as much capacity as possible to match their full capacity. And I think many of them felt that they would love to see it's something longer term, even without COVID. I'm sure of that.
Mm-hmm.
How we can work on a long-term game plan that could accommodate that. That's really another question and another challenge. That would be something worth working on, I think, in terms of just sort of the benefit of the restaurant tours and sort of the ambiance of town. I think often outdoor dining can be a nice feature of the downtown area. We are very heavily space constrained to make that possible, but maybe there's some more creative ways to find space for it without jeopardizing parking and making it look a little sort of hodgepodge or last minute thrown together, which more or less is what we did last year. So I think it's worth continuing to work on, because I do see it as something that people are interested in long term, regardless of COVID. But the more immediate need in terms of COVID, I think we're just going to have to wait and see a little bit. Another few weeks. Hopefully things are a little clearer. It seems that every week brings some new information. So I think we can count on new information coming in the next couple, 3 weeks.
Eli, if I may,
Sure.
in that case, I'm perfectly comfortable just waiting till we get a little more information.
Okay.
Okay, Eli, could I ask a question?
Yeah.
My question is, what's the information that we need? One would be whether the state's following the same guidelines as last summer. But what's the information that we need from local merchants and restaurateurs? In their best interest, the restaurateurs are going to want to expand as much of their footprint as they can. And we heard loud and clear from local merchants how they did not like the amount of parking spaces that were displaced last summer and into the fall.
So I guess the information that I would be looking for outside of the information from the state, me personally, is if restaurants need this, if they were given scenarios where, for example, indoor dining was essentially fully authorized by the state and the distance restrictions were dropped. Do the restaurants have information that they can provide us that suggests whether or not their businesses would be adequately supported by that? Because it does come back down to the issue of whether or not people actually go in there. And I don't know the answer to that. I don't think the restaurants can necessarily provide that information to us, but they're probably one of the best suited to provide some of that information. They can tell us, with more accuracy, the degree to which they were empty, and the degree to which they're filling back up over the next few weeks. I think that sort of information would be useful. And yes, it's not going to be entirely objective, but it's information nonetheless that might help us.
Thank you, Eli.
Well,
Eli, yeah, let me just comment. I'm kind of with Becky in that I don't think we need to do anything right now. It's March 1st. We all agree that even April's kind of a shaky month for eating outside. Things may evolve over the next couple of weeks because now we've got a slightly different policy that's in place for these folks. So I think that we can probably wait a couple of weeks. Greg, I assume when these folks who contacted you, they weren't necessarily pushing for a specific date. They just wanted to know what was going on.
I think that's right, John. Yes.
Okay, so it's not like they say we want to hear back from you guys as soon as possible as to what you want to do. They just
they were just anxious to get it back on our radar.
On the radar. Yes.
Yes, I think that's fair to say.
Okay. Well, I'm in favor of waiting a couple of weeks and seeing what happens, because they're not losing any time in all of this. I also think that regardless of what happens, they're still going to want outdoor dining. I think that they found that there are, you know, a lot of patrons perhaps kind of like that. They like to kind of see what's going on out there, and whatever form that takes, I think that they probably will want to do that in some form. So just going back to, even if normalcy were the case, say 60 or 90 days from now, they'll still say, well, we'd like to have some sidewalk or outside dining in some form.
All right. Well, we'll try and crack that particular nut later. Any objections to the town reaching out to the state to find out if they have thought about this and their guidelines now as opposed to later?
I think we should go ahead and get that information as soon as possible.
Accepting that it's probably going to change 3 times between now and the 1st of April.
Maybe, but at least we can
Keep track of it.
all right. I think we have enough. So we'll come back to this in another couple of weeks and see where we stand. Okay. All right, this brings us to a fine example of the topic that I raised when I first started the meeting. When I seem to remember that we actually originally planned for a slightly less time for this discussion. I now have a few minutes where I have to fill the gap. So I'm going to pull the item number 5, the consent agenda, up, because we can't start the Tobacco Woods presentation quite yet. On the consent agenda, we have Board of Selectmen meeting minutes from February 16th and a letter of resignation from Ryan Ackerman from the Welcome to Manchester Committee. Members of the board have any comments on the items in the consent agenda? I got a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? All in favor, roll call vote. Ms. Jakes,
Yes.
Ms. Harrison,
Yes.
Mr. Round,
Yes.
Mr. Bodmer Turner,
Yes,
Mr. Bowling votes yes. Next item is correspondence. We have a letter from the Mass DOT regarding our Chapter 90 funding for fiscal year 2022. And a letter from the Health and Human Services Secretary Suitors regarding the state vaccination distribution. Any questions or comments on those from the board? I'll mention that the Chapter 70 number for the town for fiscal year 2021 is 140,000. Is that a typo? $140,763. Okay, any questions from board members on the consent, on the correspondence?
I had one question, whether that 140K is up or down from last year.
Greg?
It's level.
Level?
Same amount.
Okay, so given what it'll buy, it's down.
Yes, correct. It typically stays flat for a number of years, and then there's a lot of gnashing of teeth, and then you might get a little bump and then it stays flat again. And that's typically how it goes.
Thank you, Greg.
All right. Well, that was about perfect. It's 60 to 55 now, so we can take up item number 2 on the agenda, which is Tobacco Woods Road presentation. So this is a presentation on a proposal or a request from Hamilton to relocate part of Tobacco Woods Road. Tonight, we're going to have a presentation from, I believe, Woodard and Kern on this. Ken Mavergeorge, are you the one going to be presenting this?
I am, yes.
Okay. Um, so if we end up, so in order to do this shift of the road, assuming that we approve it, this is something that will go to a town meeting vote, just so people are aware. So there's going to be plenty of time for there to be discussion around this. Mr. Mavra George, do you have a PowerPoint or anything that you're going to be presenting tonight?
I do. I have a very short presentation. If I can grab control of the screen, I can share it with the group.
Just about to give you that. All
right.
That's why. Okay.
All right. So that's 2. So hopefully, let me know when you can see my screen.
Yep.
And you see the presentation?
Yep.
Okay. So first and foremost, thank you for having us here this evening. I promise this will be really quick. As was mentioned, this project is the reconstruction or partial reconstruction of Chabaco Road. We're going to do a quick overview of the project, talk about the portion that's relocated or proposed to be relocated, as it is located on Manchester-by-the-Sea property in the town of Hamilton. And then we'll go into a brief summary of what we've done to date in the project, and then what the next steps are. If there's time, we're happy to answer any questions that there may be. So first off, the goals of this particular project are to improve the condition of the paved roadway surface. We do have a couple of photos of the project area, and you can see that the pavement will be is in complete disrepair. It's really the goal here is to improve the safety of the vehicles by improving the paved surface, maintaining a country road feel. It does have some twists and turns to it that are desirable. Limit impacting the woods and native species that are in the area. That's a critical component here as well, all while reducing sediment runoff from the gravel road and improving stormwater management where we can. And then one of the key components that applies to the Manchester-by-the-Sea is moving of the gravel road or the roadway itself away from Gravelly Pond, which is a source of drinking water for the town. So the start of the project is up at Essex Street, the top left of this image, and it goes all the way down to just past the landfill solar development and the water drinking plant at the intersection of Pine, right at the town line of Manchester-by-the-Sea. It's approximately 10,670 linear feet of roadway, and this gives you a clearer picture as to what the different components of the project. So you'll see the orange or yellow line on your screen is just a mill and overlay, and that's a currently paved roadway surface. The green area is a currently gravel road, with a portion of that gravel road located close to Gravelly Pond. I'll highlight it here with my mouse if you can see it, but that's roughly 3,375 feet of current gravel road that will be paved at the end of this project. About 2,100 linear feet will be paved within the existing limits of Chabaco Road. So another component of this, which is fully located within the town of Hamilton, is some retaining wall work to repair some of the a couple of the retaining walls located against Beck Pond, roughly 15 linear feet each. We'd be replacing it with approximately 60 linear feet. Again, just to shore up the roadway itself. As mentioned, there's a component of this project that is truly important to Manchester-by-the-Sea interest. This portion in red that you can see on the screen is a gravel road located up against Gravelly Pond, located on what is currently Manchester-by-the-Sea Conservation Restricted Area. It was the original location of Chabaco Road. Back in the 60s, the two towns had an agreement to relocate this portion of Chabaco Road into what is shown as the yellow stripe, the yellow right of way on this plan. In the mid 60s, it was designated as the right of way, but the roadway was never relocated or constructed there. As part of this project, we did conduct some geotechnical explorations in there to see if it would be a viable option for the relocation. But after consideration, there's significant amounts of shallow ledge, as well as the proximity of that right of way to the adjacent properties. You can see just to the right of that yellow line. So what we're here to talk about is developing what is shown in here is the green line, which is sort of what we think is a happy medium between the two. It still achieves the goal of moving the road further away from Gravelly Pond, thus hopefully improving the water quality, but also getting a new paved surface and creating more contiguous conservation area up against Gravelly Pond. So as I mentioned, there's just some photos of the area. This is of the roadway itself. This is the transition between the paved surface and the gravel road. And you'll see this is the portion on your screen. Off to the right here is the gravel road as it heads towards Gravelly Pond. And the trees that you see here with the red reflector in the center of your screen is the portion where the road is proposed currently. And just to the left is the 1964 right-of-way. So a little bit further, diving deeper into this, the town of Hamilton holds two established right-of-ways, the 40-foot right-of-way, which is where the current road is located, the 40-foot 1964 right-of-way, which hasn't been used. As stated, the goal is to move the roadway and pave the roadway so that it's not close to Gravelly Pond. As mentioned, it's a surface water reservoir, drinking source for the town. Geotechnical explorations, a lot of back and forth, a lot of conceptual designs. And what we feel, and you'll see in the next slide, is really the alternative that we feel works best. So what you see here is just a zoomed in area. The light blue area on the top of your screen is the 1964 right-of-way. You can see it creates a straighter shot connecting what is a gravel road on the right-hand side to the paved surface on the left. But as you'll note on the top of your screen, there are some private properties with a driveway in here, which makes construction a lot more difficult and challenging. The red is the proposed roadway, the configuration that we're seeking your approval from. And then the green area in the bottom is the existing roadway right-of-way that would be transferred back into conservation or restored back into truly conservation area. So this next page just kind of gives you an idea of what we're seeking to do with this project. The area that we just showed on that previous plan in light blue, the 1964 right-of-way, would be transferred back from back to the Manchester-By-The-Sea control and into the conservation area. It's roughly just under 45,000 square feet. The existing right-of-way that is along closest to Gravelly Pond would also be reverted back into conservation land by allowing the compacted gravels, by removing stirring up some of the compacted gravels and restoring it back to a loaming and seeding and letting it go back naturally to a wooded condition. And then what we're seeking in return from that, or what the town of Hamilton is seeking in return for that, is the 33,000, just under 34,000 square feet of a proposed permanent easement for the relocated portion of the road. The net total area would be just under 43,000 square feet to the benefit of Manchester-by-the-Sea in expanded conservation area with this proposal. So I just want to go back to one slide and kind of touch on that again. But the light blue area right now, it's currently a right-of-way in favor of Hamilton. With this project, we are seeking to put that back into the control of Manchester-by-the-Sea. And that would be part of the conservation. And if you were to walk out there today, you'd note that it's currently undisturbed area. The green area would also be returned back into conservation area by restoring as much as we can to allow it to revert back to a wooded area. And in exchange, we'd look for that red area to be a right-of-way easement to the benefit of Hamilton. There is a fourth color on here that I do want to make sure I point out, but it is in yellow, and that would be the grading that we feel is necessary in order to construct the road itself. Roughly, the whole swath is about 50 feet wide. We feel that that's sufficient room for them to build and construct this road. The red area that you see there does have some drainage associated with it, some drainage swale, roadside swale. So the area in red would be maintained by the town of Hamilton to make sure that their road operates safely and appropriately. And the yellow once the construction's done, the yellow area would revert back into the conservation area under the control of Manchester-by-the-Sea. So this is kind of why we're doing this and why we're here this evening, is that even though the property is located in the town of Hamilton, it is subjected to the conservation restriction as a conservation restriction area as part of the Massachusetts general law. And thus, any proposed land transfer is covered under Article 97 of the Massachusetts Constitution. And thus, we're starting the process. We're here tonight to talk to you about our next steps in the process. And as was noted earlier about this would have to come up for vote at the annual town meeting, as it would at the annual Hamilton town meeting. And we'll get into the next steps in the next couple of slides. So project status, town of Hamilton, we did present at the Conservation Commission about a month ago, or a couple months ago, and were issued an order of conditions for the project. We've submitted an ENF to the state, to the Massachusetts Environmental Policy Act office in June of 2020. And we are still coordinating with them to make sure that we've addressed all their comments. We're currently in the process of working with the town of Hamilton to wrap up the project plans, specifications, and other bid documents to get them ready for construction. And at this point, we anticipate a bidding process between May and June. That might extend a little bit, but we're hoping to have this project out to bid in the early summer, late spring, early summer, with construction later this year, with a wrap up hopefully by the end of the year. So I alluded to it earlier, but the next steps of this project, our meeting tonight here with Board of Selectmen, we anticipate another meeting with the general public, the neighbors and the abutters in the town of Hamilton later this month, or early in April. At this point, with your support, we would work with the town of Hamilton and the town of Manchester-by-the-Sea to draft formal Article 97 documents over the next couple of months, again to line us up to be on both agendas for the May 2021 town meetings. Over that time, we'd say we expect that the final legislation would be drafted for a vote in early summer of 2021, with the start of construction of middle of summer, July 2021. So that's really a quick overview of the project and the status and the next steps. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have about the project.
Okay, one quick comment and
Sure.
one question, and I'm turning it over to the rest of the board members. So comment is our town meeting is not going to be in May, it's going to be in the tail end of June.
Okay.
So I don't know how that plays in with your timeframes, but that's just how it's going to be.
Sure.
Second, can you go back to the map, the larger, higher level map with the yellow line on it, which shows the existing road? There you go.
Sure.
So the project end starts just after the transfer station. That's going to leave a little segment of the road that remains unpaved. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, the limit of the paved section would be at the town line.
And can you indicate on that map roughly where that is, both for us and for public to see?
Sure, I believe it's right around here. If you can see my cursor, and I believe there's the unpaved section. Maybe it may be just a few hundred feet from the town line down to the transfer station. I believe. I think that's what the limits are.
Okay. All right. Questions from board members?
I do have some if nobody else. The time of year that you all are talking about, and I'm sure the Concons would weigh in on this, but the time, do we know when the amphibians or reptiles in that area are out and in the middle of the roads, crossing to get from one to another pond?
That's a good question. I don't have the answer. We could certainly look into it. We do have an environmental and a wetland scientist working with us on the project, and there are a number of areas in the project that are hopefully going to improve the conditions out there for the wildlife. A portion of the road actually relocate that's going to be reconstructed closer to Manchester-by-the-Sea is located in an extra sensitive habitat area where we're in talking with the Conservation Commission. We want to put in additional signage. We want to take extra precautions where we can, but it's certainly something we can ask our wetland scientists and environmental scientists to assist us with as we move forward.
So you also mentioned in the information you sent that there would be tunnels to accommodate the moving of some of these animals. Does that mean the roadway would be elevated at all, or how is this achieved?
Sure. So right now, the proposed project, the yellow portion of the project is just a mill and overlay. They'll grind off 1.5 inches and then they'll pave over. So there shouldn't be any change in physical footprint of the paved surface and the elevation of the paved surface. So what's there today is essentially what you'll see in the future, just looks better. On the green section, there will be a full depth reconstruction. We had our geotechnical engineers do a number of borings out there to determine what a proper section would be. But again, some of this area is located within a FEMA flood map zone. So we want to make sure and pay extra careful attention that we're not raising the elevation on the road. What I think is being referred to as the tunnels are that there's a couple of culverts located along the project. The intent would be is that these culverts, if they're in poor shape, they may need to be reconstructed or repaired if during construction they're deemed not viable or salvageable. But there is a right sort of at the transition of current paved and gravel road, there is a trench drain that was designed to act as a salamander crossing or a small amphibian crossing. It's currently completely filled with sediment. And I think I actually have a photo of it right here. So if you can see on the screen, you see this trench drain. It's buried with sediment right now. And what this is a result. It's located just behind the camera, off the camera, from the gravel road portion, which is really why another driving reason why we, besides safety and having a paved road, which is safer, smoother, but it does allow a lot of sediment to wash off. And what the result of that is that it fills in culverts and amphibian crossings like that. So ultimately, at the end of the day, when this project is done, it's paved. We're hoping that amphibian crossing stays open for the long term and requires less maintenance.
So in addition to that, and I'm just curious, do we know why the road was put where it was as opposed to where the right of way was? I mean,
I think the existing location of the road is the original. I think that has to be the original location. It doesn't appear that there's any former right of way that it was moved closer to Gravelly Pond. I think what we gather is that in 1964, these same discussions were being had. They wanted to move the road away from Gravelly Pond, straighten it out. Certainly, that makes a lot of sense. Unfortunately, when you look at the area that it's located in, that 1964 right of way, there's a lot of large ledge outcroppings, and it actually creates a kind of a straightaway that we heard feedback from a lot of residents that there's concern about, right? If it turns into a speedway. So what we're trying to do with the green area that you can see on your screen is try to maintain a country type feel, country road type feel, but also get the benefits of moving it away from resource areas and buffers.
Okay, thank you. I just have a couple more questions.
Sure.
Do we know approximately how many trees will be taken out? And in addition to that, will there be any trees planted in the area where the road is being removed?
I don't have an exact count as to how many trees would be removed. There would be a number of trees cut from this particular area to build this road. Along the project itself, there are a number of dead or dying trees that would also have to be removed, and they'll be removed in terms of visibility to improve visibility around corners. On the gravel portion, that's not shown on your screen, but on the gravel portion of the road, there are some trees on the side of the road that are in less than ideal conditions, and they're quite large. But in particular, in this location, I don't have a solid number at this point.
Are there any old growth or heritage trees that would be taken out for that? Or
all the trees look relatively, and they're all, 24 inches or less. I mean, in the vast majority of them, if we were to walk out there, the vast majority are maybe even 6 inches or less. They're quite small in nature. There is the occasional, on our plans, our design plans do have trees above 14 inches or so identified, and there aren't as many as one would expect in this area.
And I get my last question really has to do with the motivation to do this. Is there any reason why this is brought up now that you know of?
That's a good question. I do know that there was, I think this has been an action item for the town for a while, in that, certainly 1964, there was a right of way granted. And at some point, the town is maintaining a gravel road, which is less than ideal. If we consider that some of the feedback we've heard from residents so far is that mail trucks can't get out there. The old saying about the weather can't keep the mail trucks from delivering the mail, but a poor condition of a gravel road could. School buses, emergency vehicles, it makes it really difficult for residents to get those services. And I think over time, the winter maintenance really does add up. If we went out there, a lot of the roads are ponding water, they're densely compacted. Continuous plowing pushes the gravel to the sides of the road, which, ultimately in this area, there's wetlands right up to the edge of the pavement and up to the edge of the gravel road. So as the town maintains more and more, you're creating more of you're creating conditions that are less and less sustainable and potentially could cause harm to those wetland areas. So we're trying to find, I think that, again, without speaking directly for the town, I think a lot of those things are sort of building up over time, and now this is a great time to try to improve the situation and create a win-win for as many parties as they can.
So the neighbors are enthusiastic about this?
I think they're very, I think portions of this, I think they're enthusiastic about. I think there's still, and hence why we have another public meeting that we're going to present. Initially, the first public meeting we had showed the road going in the yellow right of way, and the feedback we got was it's extremely close to their properties. There's concern for speeds, trying to maintain that country feel. So we're trying to work with them and try to find, like we said earlier, a happy medium here. So I think a lot of them would love to see it paved. This was put up for town vote, I believe, in 2019, and supported by the town to pave it. And as you can see from those other photos I showed, paving this road would result in a significant improvement over the amount of sediment in gravelly pond and in wetland areas. So I think it's been overwhelmingly supported by the town of Hamilton residents.
Thank you very much, Ken. I appreciate your
Sure.
answers. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate the questions.
I've got a question or two,
Sure.
Eli, for Ken.
Sure.
Ken,
Go
you-
ahead.
Okay, good.
Sorry.
Have you, is this kind of the first presentation or discussion of this project with Manchester? And really specifically, I'm asking, have you been in touch with our Department of Public Works on this?
I believe, I'm not sure if Tim Olson's on here, the director of the DPW.
I'm on here, Ken.
All right.
I'm on here.
All right, Tim. I'll turn it to Tim if you wouldn't mind, Tim, maybe giving a little background as to your contacts with the Manchester-by-the-Sea folks.
Sure.
Yeah, and before you start, in that context, I'm curious. I think there've been that road, the whole length of the road has been maintained, I guess, periodically with a road grader or something. I mean, I've been up and down it, and sometimes it's potholes, and sometimes it's pretty good, but it depends on your timing. And I'm curious how that has been maintained. And also doing the math here, you said 3,300 feet is unpaved and 2,100 feet will be paved. I assume that's the entire length that is in Hamilton, which would leave about 2,200 feet, or excuse me, 1,200 feet that is in Manchester.
So the whole project, Tim, just before you jump in there, I think that the whole project is located within Hamilton.
Yes,
about 2,100 feet is going to be repaved. There is going to be rebuilt and paved in its current configuration. That remaining 1,300 feet or so is the portion that would be relocated.
Oh, okay.
On Manchester. Right. Sorry, I
wasn't sure how that math was working. Okay.
Yeah. So it's currently within resource area buffers, 1,200 feet or so. Actually, it's on the screen right here. The red line is about 1,200 square feet, and because both roads are curved, it's sort of a wash. What the new road will mimic the length of the existing road. But I'll turn it over to Tim so he can
Sure.
speak a little bit more about the maintenance and contacts with Manchester-by-the-Sea folks.
Right.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Ken. I appreciate everybody's time tonight. This is Tim Olson, DPW Director in Hamilton. I've been in contact with Manchester's DPW periodically I've been in Hamilton for the last 4 years. A lot of our conversations that we've had more so are wondering when we're going to regrade the roadway. I think if I'm correct, I believe you guys have consultants that run the water treatment plant that's out there. I'm not sure if that's their way of travel, but it has come to my attention several times to have the road regraded due to the poor conditions. Our guys, they do a pretty good job. I mean, we don't have a grader in our fleet. We have a loader. And so a lot of what we do is, we Band-Aid the roadway. If there's potholes or large, problem areas, we do bring in material, we back drag, we level out, and we make the road passable. In the wintertime, it's kind of challenging because it is a resource area. We do not use salt out there. So we are trying to play the game with the snow and the ice and the conditions out there as best we can without using material. But we try to keep it passable. Our main concern is that we have the Hamilton landfill out there that we open for brush days for residents. We also have the Rod and Gun Club out there. We also have a new solar array at our landfill, and DPW uses that as a stockpile area. So we do have municipal use and committees and groups that use that area. We also have that road that's heavily traveled for recreational area to the Tobacco Lake, to the boat launch, things like that. So, it's one of 3 roads that we have in Hamilton that are public roadways that are gravel. They are all a little different, but a large maintenance tasks. They do take up quite a bit of time as well as funding to maintain those roadways. And you're correct. If we have we just get the road done, and maybe a week and a half, 2 weeks later, we get a rainstorm, and everything that we've just done for the last 2 or 3 days is all for nothing. So this, by paving the roadway, we take away the maintenance, but we also add the a nice, safe traveled roadway. That's my job in town to create that and to maintain that. So we take away that whole response issue, public safety response. We've had problems in the past with ambulances, fire, like Ken said, mail trucks. So what we're trying to do is trying to create the road, a nice, safe, traveled town public roadway through that area, and then maintain or I guess properly maintenance the other paved section that's in fair shape, but can use an 1.5 inch overlay. So we're just trying to create in continuity the whole nice project from Essex Street to Wenham Hamilton town line. I don't know if that answers all your questions, but I'm here if you have any others.
Okay, so, well, my initial question is, have you spoken with our Department of Public Works, and are they aware that you have this project in near-term consideration?
So I've talked with Greg through our town manager, Joe Dumolovitz. I've talked with Greg Fetterspiel, your town administrator, and yep. I have talked to Chuck Dam. I believe it was through email. That was way back, a little bit ago. I've been waiting to get to this point to keep him updated, going through our Concom and, public presentations, as well as sitting here tonight with you. So I'm just trying to give him updates, but I have touched base with him. Like I said, I think we did talk briefly about trying to maybe bring on the rest of the paving as part of this project. Through in Hamilton and then into Manchester. But those are conversations that we have to have again as we get further with this project, knowing that it was going to be a kind of a longer term, with the permitting as well as the conservation restriction.
Okay, thank you.
I haven't heard anything negative from him. So
in progress.
Yep.
Other board members?
If I may,
yeah.
I thought I saw an article recently about a proposed development at the junction of Essex Street and Tobacco Road. Does that have any, is that any part of this consideration?
It is not. That project is brand new. This project's been going on for about, a long time, but since I've been here for several years now, we're trying to get this project done. So that project came in after this project was already underway.
Thank you.
Eli?
Go ahead, Jeff.
I have 2 questions. One is, you paved this road, and what thought has gone into speed mitigation and speed limits on the road for people traveling along the road?
Sure. So one of the things we looked at when deciding, so again, the first 7,000 or so feet of roadway would be milled and overlaid. Essentially, whatever the width of the road is, maintain that width, whatever the elevation of the road is, maintain that elevation. The last 3,000 or so feet from Pond Street down to the Manchester town line, we're looking at complete full depth reconstruction of the road. And with that, what we're doing is instead of having a roadway that varies in width from 17 to 22 or greater feet, which is what the gravel road does today, is restricting the pavement, edge of pavement to edge of pavement to 20 feet wide. There wouldn't be a center line, but it having narrower roadway with some fog lines on the outside does promote slower speeds in the area. It does give sufficient room for vehicles to move beyond each other, but have maintain that lower speed limit that currently exists out there. One thing we mentioned a number of times with all of our presentations has been the desire of the town to maintain that country feel. Hearing that the residents in the area don't want a speedway, right? They don't want this straight runway of straight, like you see in the screen, the light blue. It's almost a runway of sorts. So by keeping some of those softer curves in there, it promotes vehicles to take a slower speed around in the area. One of the items that was brought up earlier was the amphibians and the wildlife that exists in the area. We're also providing some signage there to encourage travelers to slow down, knowing that there are animals and wildlife that are passing. So there's a number of measures that we're looking at, including additional signage, adding curves into the road, and narrower travel widths where we can safely to promote slower speeds.
In that regard, have you done any kind of traffic study that looks at diversion of traffic off of 128 coming this way rather than going up to Southern Ave or getting off on 22?
There was no formal traffic study completed as part of this. Primary goal and objective of this project is to pave the road, reduce the amount of gravel, reduce and try to limit the amount of sediment transporting off the site.
So there's been no consideration of changes in traffic flows off of 128?
Not as part of this project, no.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. So as we said before, this has got to go to a town meeting vote if we proceed on it, and so there's going to be time for us to be soliciting public input, and I'll leave some time opening in a future meeting to ask public to comment or ask questions.
So Eli, if I might.
Yeah, go ahead, Greg.
So Ken, could you just give a quick summary of the Hamilton's Conservation Commission review and conditions that they may have placed?
Sure. So the review generally focused on, as was discussed just a moment ago, wildlife passage. We heard from a number of abutters in the area about concerns on the wildlife passage. I don't believe, and again, I don't have the order conditions right up here in front of me, but it didn't appear that there's any conditions or drastic changes to the plans that you see here, specifically related to the relocation of the road. I think to summarize it, generally they were supportive of the paving of the roadway, as it is seen as an improvement over the current condition. Any chance to move roadway away from resource areas or provide some stormwater management, which in this case, we are trying to do some improvements in stormwater. It was generally, thought highly of the project itself, is that it's doing what it can in a tricky situation. I think what's noticeable or notable about this project in that we're trying to work within the constraints of the roadway. There's narrow right-of-ways. There's significant amount of vegetation. Wetlands are right up against the road, and as we noted, there is some wildlife habitat all throughout this area. So trying to do all of these measures by also taking into consideration all of those constraints, I think overall they were pretty happy with the design, as opposed to clearing a large significant amount of trees and putting in detention ponds. That would be less likely to be maintained in the long term.
And Greg, if you wanted a copy of those order conditions, I can send them over to you.
That'd be great, Tim. Thank you.
Okay, sure.
Right. So I think I'm going to say thank you for your presentation tonight, but I'm going to ask you to hang on for 1 minute because another thought has occurred to me here.
Sure.
So it is 7:35, 7:36 now. We had originally scheduled on our agenda 40B project update at 7:15, then going into the annual town meeting discussion at 7:30. Alan Wilson, was it your intent to listen to both of those, or were you here primarily for the annual town meeting updates?
Well, I was going to listen to both, but I'm here primarily for the annual town meeting update. So if you're thinking about taking them out of order, I'll probably stay on for both, but I would appreciate you doing that.
Yeah, and I was, and one of the reasons I was thinking taking it out of order is because one facet of this discussion was the need for an annual town meeting vote. And I thought that perhaps while we have folks from the project here, it might be worth diving into the annual town meeting discussion and discuss the logistics around such a vote very briefly at the beginning of that. What do you think about that, Alan?
I think that's fine.
Other board members okay with doing that? All right, let's do that. So let's discuss what that annual town meeting vote would actually be and discuss the logistics and the voting requirements and possible outcomes. So Greg, can you give us some specifics around what the vote would actually be?
So voters would need to approve abandoning the two current right-of-ways and approving the new one. So they'd be, the vote would be to abandon the blue and the green and to accept the red as a new right-of-way and to seek legislative approval under the Article 97 provisions.
And I haven't researched it. Greg, you may know, but I believe that all three of those would require a 2/3 vote. The abandoning of the existing right-of-ways because there'd be a transfer of an interest in real estate, and the a transfer of the new right-of-way because it would be a transfer of conservation land.
I believe that's correct, Alan. I haven't confirmed that, but I think
subject to checking, but I think that's right.
Yes.
And the Article 97 work with the state, is that pro forma, or is that something that we would have to pursue and lobby for?
I think generally if the town approves it, it's pretty much pro forma.
In this particular case, since we're gaining conservation land and providing some benefit, additional benefit to Gravelly Pond, I'm not anticipating much opposition. It's not pro forma if you're decreasing conservation land. So in that case, it can be an uphill battle. I'm not anticipating that in this case. I don't know if Hamilton folks have had any preliminary conversations with Bruce or Brad yet or not. But,
Yeah, Greg, we've sent out some preliminary emails to Senator Tar and Representative Brad Hill, getting them prepared. They have done these Chapter 97s in the past. They have informed us. I just wanted to really quickly, I know we're wrapping this up a little bit. I just want to quickly bring up where Hamilton's been kind of through this project. We did, as Ken mentioned earlier, we did go to town meeting back in, I think in 2019. The town overwhelmingly voted in support of this project for $1 million to get this road paved. So it's just not a group of people. It's not a DPW project. It's not a town manager project. The town voted in support of this at town meeting and funded $1 million for this project. So we ask, I'm just bringing that up to Manchester, just so you know that it's a town of Hamilton's wish to get this road paved, not a DPW, not a town manager. It's a town-wide recommendation. So I just want to let you know that.
Just to go back to underscore what Greg said, in addition to the net gain of conservation land in terms of square footage, the fact that the road is being moved further away from the water resource area
Correct.
weighs significantly in its favor under Article 97, I think. You agree, Greg?
yes, I do.
Okay. So seems obviously we're going to gather, public opinion. Seems likely that we'll be discussing this at the annual town meeting. I don't know how lengthy that conversation will be. I guess it will be helped if we do a certain amount of public outreach before we get to town meeting on the subject. Any thoughts on that from the board?
Eli,
Yeah, go ahead, Becky.
would it make sense also to have a representative from their town be in attendance to answer questions as well?
Probably not a bad idea, Alan. That's your meeting, so.
I think that makes a lot of sense. If perhaps
We can make that happen.
if
I mean, I'm available and I can talk to Ken offline.
Yeah, we
I
can.
think if Tim and Ken were both available, that would be helpful.
Sure, we can get you. In the meantime, we can certainly get you a PDF version of the presentation to post or share with constituents.
That would be a good idea. All right. Well, can we let Woodard and Curran and Hamilton people go now? Any other or questions from board members for them before they go? You good to go, Alan?
Sorry?
You all set with Hamilton, Alan?
I think so. Thank you both very much.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
Well, thanks very much, gentlemen. We'll be in touch with you soon.
Okay, thank you so much. Have a good evening.
You too. All right. On the remaining town articles, we touched briefly on, I'm sorry. Why don't we talk about the date first? Because we did say that we were going to commit on the date of this meeting. Right now, we've gotten feedback from the state school that June 21st and June 23rd as a backup date will be fine. So that would be Monday, I get that right, Monday, June 21st and Wednesday, June 23rd for a rain date. So tonight, what I'd like is to see if the board have any further comments on that, and then we can make a vote to move the date of town meeting to June 21st. So, comments? All right. Well, then can I get a motion to, under Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 39, Section 9, to move the Manchester-by-the-Sea annual town meeting for 2021 to June 21st, with a rain date of June 23rd. Alan, do we need a time on that one, or do you just specify the date?
I think it would probably be well to specify the time as well. I don't know
You-
that it's required.
Yeah, I mean, certainly the warrant will have the time, so we will have that posted, but it doesn't hurt, but I don't think it's absolutely necessary right now. Well, I think we met at 6:30 last year.
Yes, I think that's right.
You comfortable with that time again, Alan?
Well, you know, the earlier we start, the longer we're going to have daylight. Not, I mean, the field's lighted, but daylight is better. If we had some hesitancy last year because of accommodating commuters. I don't know that many people are commuting at this stage. So if I will leave it up to the board, but it could be 6, maybe 6:30, either one.
Board members, 6 or 6:30?
6.
6.
I would say 6:30 to get to accommodate people who are commuting. And you're plunking this down right on the solstice, so it's the longest night of the year, and longest day of the year.
It was the second longest day last year too, and we had fog coming in before the meeting ended. But I'm happy with either one, either time.
John Round?
I'm good with either time as well, Eli.
I lean towards 6:30 because I do think there are commuters still in play.
Fine.
All right, so can I get a motion?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Roll call vote, Ms. Jakes,
Yes.
Ms. Harrison,
Yes.
Mr. Round,
Yes.
Mr. Bob Returner,
Yes,
Mr. Bowling votes yes. All right, so June 21st, 6:30 p.m., rain date on June 23rd. And yep. All right, articles. So there were 3 articles left over from last year. One, 2 of them were was recommended that we push them out to the fall town meeting. One of them was the short-term rental tax law, and the other was has escaped me. Greg, which one was it?
I'm sorry, I was looking at my notes. You were asking what?
So we had
Which-
3 laws last year that we had deferred, and we're going to defer again some of them at least to the fall town meeting. One of them was the short-term rental tax law. One was the
The water and sewer lien on
Yep.
rental properties.
Yep. And then the other one was
Can't remember.
Sprinklers. Sprinklers.
Thank you. Oh
Sprink-
my God.
Sprinklers.
the requirements for sprinklers in conjugate living facilities. So those two, we talked about moving those out to the fall town meeting. The other one was the tax liens, allowing us to go to the property owners for outstanding tax liens for water and sewer bills, for example. Is there any, and that one actually we could potentially do in the Springtown meeting. But do board members have any particularly strong feelings about whether or not we should push those out to fall town meeting, or do you want to take up any of them in the Springtown meeting?
My feeling is the shorter the better for the Springtown meeting. Just because it's hard to communicate. We don't have the visual stuff that we would have in the fall. So I would favor pushing all three of those out.
I agree with Dan.
John?
Yes, I think the shorter the better. That's correct. Ann said it right at the beginning.
Jeff?
I'll go with the board.
All right. Okay, then I don't think we need to vote on that. We only need to vote if we're going to include. So then the other item was there was a petition from the planning board regarding planning board configuration. And right now the recommendation is to move that out to the fall town meeting as well, because that's likely to generate more discussion. And we're trying to keep things shorter. Board members agree on that one as well?
Yes.
Yes.
Ann says yes. Jeff?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Okay. Other articles that need to be discussed tonight, Greg?
No, I believe so. No, you've handled the critical ones. So you can move on from that.
Alan, you good on those?
Absolutely. It's obviously your call as a board, but I'm all in favor of making it as short as possible while we're still in the pandemic.
I have a question. If we receive citizen petitions for other articles, will we be required to hear those at the Springtown meeting?
Yes. If they're given to us within 60 days ahead of the new date for the annual town meeting, we're required to put them on the agenda, on the warrant.
Regardless of how many there are.
That is correct. Okay, any other questions or comments in there before we move on to the FY22 budget discussion in this? All right, Greg, did you want to tee up anything there?
So as mentioned to you, the school committee setting up a meeting for your counterparts in Essex, along with both boards of both committees, both finance committees from the two towns, aiming to meet next week, March 11th, to take a deeper dive on sort of the long range projections for school budgets and how those get funded. As I think we talked a little bit about at your last meeting, the school committee has approved recommending appropriations or total budget, I should say, that increases 3.5%. Essex is struggling to balance their budget, and they have asked for a 2.5% overall increase to the district's budget, suggesting that they dip into their reserves more heavily than they currently are planning, though they are planning to dip into it a fair amount under their proposal at 3.5%. So this is teed up for next week to have a more in-depth discussion about how best to proceed whether or not the 2.5 budget approach is something that should be planned for year after year, or if indeed we do a temporary heavy dip into the school's reserves, and it would certainly tee up then, if we don't make significant changes to the operating budget for the school, it would certainly tee up having an override sooner rather than later for the school to continue to have the funding that they currently need for the programming that they offer. So that's next week. The Finance Committee is working through all the departmental requests. Those are going fairly smoothly. This coming Wednesday, they will be taking up the discussion on dispatch. You're certainly invited to attend and listen in on that discussion and participate. So I'd say from a town operating budget, I think the two outstanding issues, the larger two outstanding issues that we have left are the question of dispatch and staffing at the fire department. There's still some work to do on capital, and we will continue with that as well. But probably dispatch and fire staffing are the two biggest issues remaining.
Questions, comments from the board?
I'm sorry, I was not paying it sufficient attention. When is the Finance Committee taking up dispatch?
It'll be this Wednesday
And
at 7 o'clock.
that's a joint meeting?
And we can post it as a joint meeting.
I would assume it's already been posted.
The Finance Committee has posted it. We still can post for you tomorrow morning and be on time.
Yeah, I thought that was going to be a joint meeting.
Yeah, I thought so too. They're posting. So we can put up a posting tomorrow so that it's official meeting for you as well.
Yep. Yep, that would be a good idea, because that's why we originally had dispatch planned on discussion here, and we moved it over to, or we just decided to join the FinCom meeting. I thought that Sarah Mellish was expecting us to be joint there as well.
Yeah, I think she is expecting that. I think she just, again, using the template that she had.
All right. Okay. Well, if there's no other conversations on questions on budget, I think we can move off the annual town meeting topic.
Eli, thank you for taking this out of order. I appreciate it. I am going to sign off tonight, but I will be on for your workshop on Thursday on the 40B.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yep. I'll see you then. All right, move on to item number 3, which is 40B project update. Okay, so on Thursday, we will be having our third round of negotiations or discussions with the developer. And he has sent us, well, he sent us a few things over the past couple of weeks. One was some detailed information, more detailed information that we had asked for about the, oh, Sarah Mellish, you have your hand raised.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So when we scheduled the March 3rd meeting, we decided it would not be joint, but Jeffrey was going to attend it. So it was not posted as a joint meeting.
Ah,
But anyone who wants to join is welcome.
Okay. I think we may want to go ahead and try and adjust to a joint posting because there's some information that Jeff and I were trying to acquire which might be useful to that discussion if we can get it before Wednesday.
I think we're challenged with the timeline. It had to be posted today,
Yeah.
but you're welcome to join us.
All right. Oh, wait, I have an idea on how to deal with this.
Love that.
Greg, let me talk to you tomorrow and I'll make a recommendation. We can roll up some of our information and give it to Greg to present and be in listen mode at that particular meeting.
Sounds good.
All right. Back to the 40B discussion. Okay, so we got information from the developer on the wetlands bylaw provisions that he had been asking or wanting to ask for waivers for, thought he was going to need waivers for. That information was given to the Conservation Commission, and they in turn gave us back a report on what the different aspects of the
We've done that.
Hey Sarah, I'm gonna mute you.
Thanks.
So we have the report from the Conservation Commission on which parts of those the wetlands bylaws are different between the town's wetland bylaws and the state's laws, and which ones the Conservation Commission viewed as particularly important and how it relates to the 40B project. We also got from the developer a list of their current set of conditions that they would agree to and under which conditions they would agree to those conditions. It doesn't include a couple of the conditions that we had originally talked about under environmental, because we haven't actually had that discussion with the developer yet. And it didn't include sidewalks, but that was kind of an omission because, well, the developer's still working on it. So the developer is pushing fairly hard at this point for us to come to a conclusion one way or another, to indicate to him whether or not the board feels like it can come up with a set of conditions under which we would endorse the project. And I think on Thursday, we're going to be under increasing pressure to make it a decision or to indicate fairly strongly which way we're leaning on this. So what I want to talk about tonight in this part of the meeting is the terms and conditions the developer gave us and where we want to communicate other terms and conditions ahead of the Thursday meeting. And, so let's start with that. So board members have had an opportunity to look at the developer's list of terms and conditions. And by the way, I think what we'll probably end up doing is we'll take that letter and we'll put it on the 40B website so the members of the public can have some visibility into it. It's about 20 conditions, and they're all basically the same as the ones we've been discussing over the past several weeks, with some differences in the dollar amounts, for example, that the developer would be willing to give towards certain capital requests, for example. So I'm not going to read through all 20 of them tonight, but we will go ahead and make that available for people ahead of the meeting on Thursday. So in the meantime, board members, do you have comments on the individual conditions and things that you want clarification on, or things that we want to communicate to the developer ahead of the Thursday meeting?
Eli?
Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
I had a question about whether we had a written agreement with the developer regarding our bringing in peer review consultants into the board's process, where he had agreed to pay for that. That was my understanding before we started to bring in the peer review consultants. And that's not the understanding of item number 9 in this agreement, in this proposal.
So the caveat has always been there from his perspective that he would pay if he got an approved loan.
And
So
that's
what he said.
That's in writing?
Yes. I mean, that's his communications has always been that.
That was not my understanding, so that's on me.
Other board members?
I have a couple of just points of wanting clarification. On item 3, Eli, it states that the developer will maintain the same proportions of 3211 plus bedroom units. And I've brought this up before, but then in his visual that he provides, it's 3, 2 plus, 2, 1 plus, and 1. Anyway, it just, they don't say the same thing.
Well, you mean because it doesn't mention 2 plus in the...
Correct. Yep. I just think it needs to be, they need to say the same thing. And the other was in 20, where he talks about compliance of wastewater system and stormwater management system. And I easily may have missed this, but we still haven't had proper information regarding how the handling of snow will be done. And, you know, the plowing it off to the sides and building up high banks of snow is not handling it.
So if I recall at a previous meeting, there was a request to the developer regarding
Yes.
about the snow. All right.
I'm also curious as to the final comment by the developer, again, to tie into municipal sewer.
Well, so he would love to tie into municipal sewer. He said it over and
Right.
over again. He used to say it. We told him over and over again. We want you to stick with your original plan, which was to have on-site septic.
Right.
I don't think we've changed our position on that. So you can keep saying that. I mean,
Yep.
that's what he wants. It continues to be a negotiation, so people can ask for whatever they want. And our
Mhm.
position still remains that we want to go with the on-site septic per his original.
Is that Kitty? Yeah.
Mm.
So
In the body of this proposal, I mean, I've been over it several times and I'm not seeing it as I go over it again now. Is there a condition in this proposal from his point of view that he obtains all those waivers that he's asking for from the BOS? All the waivers of Concom?
no, it's put differently, right? I mean, where's the word encourage?
Number 15.
So number 15 says the Board of Selectmen will encourage, through its support of the LIP application, the Zoning Board of Appeals to grant all necessary waivers from local zoning and conservation bylaws that are necessary to build the project as represented in design. So that's, I mean, that word encourage, frankly, it seems to me like item 15 could just be removed from here because it's not really an effective clause. And we, do that or leave it up to the Zoning Board of Appeals to go through the normal process of, you know, if the developer needs a waiver, they apply for the waiver from the Zoning Board of Appeals, and the Zoning Board of Appeals either grants it or not. And then they appeal it if they need to.
Right.
So I don't know why we really need at this point to have 15 in there. It's not in our best interests, and I don't think it really helps the developer all that much.
Okay, just wanted to make sure I understood that for what it was, that it was.
Yeah, I believe that's the one. So I'll make a couple of observations in here. At our last meeting, we had said that we would trade out the turf field for an additional contribution to the Affordable Housing Trust. The developer's numbers that came back, he said that he's agreed putting $500,000 to the fire department to be used at their discretion. So that's more broad than we had asked for. We just said fire equipment. 350,000.
Eli, may I interrupt a minute?
Yep.
I'm sorry, he said those numbers apply only if we successfully get that $1 million grant,
Right.
right, from MassWorks. I just want to make sure that, you know, he's only willing to do that if we get that grant, that MassWorks grant.
Yeah. So, excess of $1 million. So the numbers were 500,000 the fire department, 350,000 the Affordable Housing Trust, and 100,000 into the town's turf field project. But above that, he also said that he would unconditionally, as a condition of receiving an occupancy permit, fund 250,000 of the Affordable Housing Trust. So the sum total that would go into the Affordable Housing Trust, if he got the MassWorks grant, would be $600,000. But there's also the $100,000 that goes in the turf field project. In our last meeting, we said, well, we would trade off the turf field project for sum total of $1 million going into the Affordable Housing Trust. And I want to get the board's feelings on what their opinions are about this set of proposed conditions and whether or not we want to ask him to move the turf field money into the Affordable Housing Trust on Thursday.
Eli, if I may.
Go ahead, Becky.
That would be my preference. I mean, that's what we stated last time, and that, not that, you know, I definitely think our turf field projects are very important. But that would be my inclination is to have it go towards Affordable Housing Trust.
Eli, I agree with Becky. I think it's a more relevant donation.
Jeff? Other board members?
I would just assume, I would rather see it in the Affordable Housing Trust.
I would as well.
All right. The other, one of the other main differences from our discussions before, we had asked for money to go into a shuttle system to support, well, to hopefully reduce the impact of parking in the downtown area and traffic overall. And in his current proposal, he says the applicant will make a one-time capital contribution of $25,000 of the shuttle system. Well, it says, quote, on after that shuttle system has been established. But I think there's just some typos in there. The relevant part is a one-time capital number of $25,000. Where's the board stand on that? Before, we'd been looking for an annual contribution to support that system.
I think an annual contribution is appropriate. This is not a one-time thing. That building is going to be there for a long time.
I tend to agree, and I wonder about what we could do to well, I don't know if there are additional conditions that could be attached to it to make it more acceptable. So, for example, make a $25,000 annual contribution, provided that the occupancy is above some percentage, or do we just want to simply say $25,000 annual contribution? I think originally we'd said 50.
I think there should be, if the shuttle isn't being used, then I don't think it's reasonable to assess the same amount of money. Plus, I would think that the value of that donation, depending on what the value of the dollar is going to change. So to just put in a dollar amount for forever,
That's true.
is not as logical as a percentage use, perhaps.
Well,
Not that I know the answer how we figured it out.
what we really want is we want an annual contribution, and we need to hash out the amount and conditions of the amount, and leave it at that, as opposed to trying to beat out a number right now and just have that conversation with them on Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
My thought about this is that there's no plan to have a shuttle in Manchester without this development. And if he and his partners are unwilling to support that shuttle system to some extent, in a formula to be determined, then we scuttle the shuttle. Period. It makes the place much less attractive.
I'm sort of guessing, and I think I know what he would say, but
Yeah, you would say scuttle it.
yeah. And the reason we put the shuttle in there in the first place is because we want to try and mitigate, we thought it was the best way for us to potentially mitigate traffic and parking impact.
Yeah, I'm afraid we would suffer. We, the collective town, would suffer more without the shuttle.
I'm personally inclined to push.
Do we know how much it would cost to put the shuttle in?
So a few years ago, we had worked with CADA on a loop, basically for the AM and PM commuter time, and then some lesser frequency during non-commuter time. And the cost for that service was just north of 100,000 a year to run that service.
But some of that was going to be supported through the MBTA's.
Correct.
There's a certain percentage of local taxes or user fees that go from the go into the MBTA to provide or for the provision of shuttle services, but it just basically gets soaked up by the MBTA right now. However, municipalities have the right to apply for some other entity to provide those shuttle services like CADA. And then the MBTA has to give up that sum of money. And I don't remember what it was. Do you remember, Greg?
Yeah, it was, it's around 115,000 a year.
Yeah.
So would it pay for the whole shuttle system?
That version of it, yes.
That version, yeah.
So this would obviously expand it a bit. And we're talking, prices 4 or 5 years ago. So,
because the question in my mind is who else benefits from having a shuttle system? We don't have, like Rockport has parking systems outside of the downtown village. And so people park there and then they can take a shuttle into the village and take a shuttle back out to their car. We don't have that kind of a system. And who, other than this development, who would be benefiting from this? I mean,
so longer term, if
longer term, if there's some housing development on the other side of the road,
or commercial, yes. So I mean, I don't think this this project doesn't get built tomorrow, even if he gets a permit. So I think if we're looking 5 years down the road, I think we have potentially a different environment up there.
okay.
Eli, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead, Becky.
To Jeff's comment, does it make sense for our town to look into something along the lines of the Rockport trolley as opposed to CADA and thinking about other areas of parking, especially if coming into this spring, I'm guessing we're going to lose the parking that's back, the church parking that was allowed for us to use behind the bank. So is this something we should explore anyway and possibly tie in to a development at some point?
In what way as a condition for something that we would discuss on Thursday?
Well, as opposed to having a specific shuttle named, I think we've been talking about Cape Ann Transit at this point. But
Well,
if we, I'm sorry.
Well, we've been discussing that internally. We haven't been telling the developer Cape Ann Transit. We use this as an exemplary.
Okay. A generic shuttle. All right. Thank you.
All right. So again, my inclination is to communicate to the developer that we do want, we still are interested in the annual contribution to a shuttle in the form of that, something that we want to hash out. And would like to discuss on Thursday. Is that a fair communication for us to make? I see nodding heads.
Yes.
So yes.
Other comments on any of these conditions that we want to discuss tonight?
Yeah, Eli, I have a question about the follow-up email that Mr. Engler had sent with regard to the sidewalks.
Yeah, go ahead. And by the way, Mike, I see your hand raised. I'll get to you in a little bit.
And I mean, he has acceded to the fact that, yes, he needs some sort of a waiver from the ADA, and he's willing to apply for that. His indication is that those waivers are, quote, customarily granted. I don't know. And he also indicated that he'd be willing to also include the sidewalk from 128 to the entry of the development. I'm just trying to think. He indicated that, yeah, it costs money. He thought that the request was something that wasn't necessarily, he didn't necessarily see a value in it, but that's his perspective. But I guess my question is, so what's his incentive to put that in there? He doesn't care if the waiver goes through or not. Actually, he cares if it does go through because it costs him money. And so I'm thinking how this might be dealt with in some way. I don't know. One thing that I would say is, waiver or no waiver, I'm certainly interested in a sidewalk going to the development, the entry of the development that, what, 200 or 300 feet down School Street.
Yep.
I think we could ask our attorney to craft some language that would require a full faith effort to obtain the waiver. We can participate in that process.
Yeah.
Those are public hearings that these waiver requests take place at. So I think you could do a little more than just keep your fingers crossed that he's going to pursue.
That's not a strategy.
Right.
On that sidewalk, I'd like to see some sort of drawing of what his experts say he could put in.
Okay. All right. Mike, I'm going to get to you in a minute, but I have a couple of other things to kind of finish off here before I consider opening it up right now. So, John, did you have anything else on sidewalks?
No, I'm interested in what Mr. Whitten would have to say. I agree, but that was really the crux of my concern.
Okay. All right. Well, another thing that was missing, although he did include a discussion about irrigation, which I don't think was for him. He did not include any of the discussion that we had about no net increase in nutrient loading beyond the borders of the beyond the border of the development. And this is something that we will want to discuss with him on Thursday. Board members have any comments on that before we move on?
His question about that, Eli, had been, how would you measure it?
Greg?
So there are first of all, there are standards, and it's the applicant developer's burden to demonstrate that they're meeting positively, that they aren't having an increase. I think again, I think Attorney Whitten could give us some guidance on that.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Greg, I'd be happy to respond if you'd like me to.
Yes, please.
So the ability to monitor down gradient property boundary effluent is pretty straightforward. It's done through monitoring wells and pre and post conditions. So the pre-construction nitrogen levels are monitored, and then the post nitrogen levels are monitored. So it's a routine practice, and it's a requirement of the issuance of a groundwater discharge permit anyway. So the issuance of the groundwater discharge permit will include a condition of generally could be quarterly monitoring. Sometimes it's twice a year, and it's to measure down gradient flow. So in a case like this, if that were a condition that the board wished to impose and the ZBA wished to impose as well, it's consistent with the issuance of a groundwater discharge permit, and the town could have greater standards than the Commonwealth. So instead of 5 milligrams per liter of nitrogen, the board could request a more restrictive standard. Phosphorus is another parameter that can be monitored. The issue sometimes is, what do you do if the numbers exceed the required amount? And there are treatment methodologies that can be employed, but it's perfectly permissible as a condition for the issuance of a groundwater discharge permit to include that kind of down gradient trigger, whether it's phosphorus or nitrogen or both.
So again, it's my expectation that we're going to have that discussion on Thursday. All right, do board members have any other comments before I let Mr. Mike here speak? All right, Mike, go ahead and unmute yourself, identify yourself fully, and
Hi, Eli. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Excellent. Mike Ross-Marin. Just a quick question, going back to the CADA bus. If I recall from the recent BOS FinCom meeting, that when some of the numbers were gone over with everything, we're already about $1 million in the hole on this as far as tax base goes. The CADA bus is going to cost another $100,000. And if we're just talking about $25,000 contribution, we're just adding to what we're a net negative already. So I don't see that this project should go forward without them funding a CADA bus. Because as Mr. Bodner-Turner said, it's not going to benefit anyone else but this particular development. is not going to benefit the downtown. It's not going to benefit anything because the amount of parking or whatever, but it's going to be a shuttle that's going to have to be run. That's my entire comment.
Okay, thank you. Okay, board members, any comments or thoughts before we move on? Jeff, I'm not sure if you're getting ready to talk or not.
I am. Thank you for noticing the scrunched up eyebrows.
Yeah.
Did I just hear the last question or comment put forth that this project is already $1 million in the hole for the town? I'm uncomfortable with that comment sitting because that's not the case. At least in terms of all the financial impacts that we've looked at and the reports of the that we've reviewed, that this is a net positive in tax revenue.
So the Finance Committee has had some discussions. They are working on a report that they'll get to you. They have taken a bit of a contrarian view about how you assess the impact of the student costs in particular. And that would drive up the cost of the project in terms of its burden to the town significantly.
And when will we see this, since we are going into another negotiation session, which from the developer's point of view is going to be his cards on the table final on Thursday?
Right. It's probably a week or so away.
And I feel like the BOS is in a vice. And it's in a vice between the town, certain citizens of the town, now a board, and the developer. And I'm concerned that if they are presenting numbers that indicate that this is not, this project is going to have a fiscal impact that goes well beyond what the original fiscal impact report and the peer review said, why that is not in our hands today. How can we possibly be making decisions if we're going to be headed up with a finance committee report after Thursday? And I realize the finance committee's got a lot on their plate, that we have to run the town, that we have to create a budget for the annual town meeting. But I'm really surprised to hear what you just said, Greg. And that we, as at least for me as a board member, I don't know whether other board members were aware of this. I'm just finding out about this tonight.
So not to underestimate the concerns about fiscal impact, but the reality is state law doesn't allow us to approve or deny a project based on its fiscal impact. It's not a criterion that we are allowed to weigh in on. It may influence you how you might want to negotiate, but at the end of the day, the state doesn't care. State does not care if this project costs us money or not.
As a member of the Board of Selectmen who's been involved in the negotiations of a so-called friendly 40B, I care.
No, I
Because
get that.
If we had this information up front, if we had these finance committee deliberations up front, we would have been asking for a lot of other mitigation in the friendly 40B format.
Yeah, I think it would be difficult to win that argument when you've got two well-respected fiscal experts using a methodology that is sort of tried and true.
It'd be difficult for who to win what argument?
It'd be too difficult for us in our finance committee to win the argument that they're trying to put forward.
But obviously they're spending time on this. I mean, I don't want to waste the board's time tonight with this. I'm real uncomfortable with what I just heard.
Sarah Melish, did you have a comment?
Yes, I think the finance committee has do their due diligence, and we have concerns regarding the ultimate finance considerations of the town. But we have a report ready to come out later this week.
Sarah, with all due respect, why haven't we seen this earlier?
We're working on it.
I hear that, but I'm still asking the question.
I think it's been a challenge with respect to the 40B development and how the finance committee would weigh in. And our position is that we want to alert the town people regarding the potential implications.
So maybe the finance committee can discuss this again this Wednesday and perhaps provide a summary of the information that they have
Thank you.
so
It's on
far.
our agenda for 3/3.
Thank you, Sarah.
So we can go and listen to what they have to say at that meeting. Other board members, other questions before we move on from this topic for now? Sandy, I see your hand raised, but I'm not going to be taking any additional public comment tonight. All right, so let's move on to the town administrator's report.
I'll be brief. Had some good news last week in terms of some resources for the community. The grant application before the Seaport Economic Development Council was successful in terms of seeking the bulk of the dollars for the construction of the floats, the ramp out at Tux Point. So an $811,000 grant was received for that work. We hope to get that project out to bid just as soon as we can, and hope to have construction with any luck take place this May and into June, and have it ready for the bulk of the season this summer. There was a second smaller grant that was awarded, again from the council, and this is a study to take a look at expanding the ability for commercial fishermen to have slips near the commercial pier, Morse Pier at Masco. And instead of having all of the fishermen have to be on moorings, it would be the possibility of providing slips right off the pier, and avoid having them to go in and out in either a dinghy or bringing their boat into the pier. So that'll be a study that'll be reviewed and subject for future discussion as to whether or not that's something we want to proceed with. But kudos to Maya for writing those grants and obtaining those funds to help us move forward with those projects. We continue to pursue various permitting and licensing questions concerning activity at 10 Old Wenham Way. We'll give you more of an update when we hear back, both from our building inspector and from others on that. The discussions have on the LCD and what approach is best to take continues. A good discussion and forum this past Tuesday, last week. And there was a presentation by a couple of the landowners. Mr. Simboli, owner of the MAC in particular, presented some potential build-out scenarios. That was the subject of a lot of discussion, a lot of good questions. And the planning board will continue to work through the different options that are presented in terms of possibility of changing some of our zoning for those areas. And as you know, we're not going to be taking those up at the Springtown meeting, but they will continue to work and have things teed up for some fall votes. Again, there are various options and the efforts will continue. We will be trying to schedule a meeting of the various land use boards in the near future, just to give everyone a chance to get a sense of where things are and to better hear from the various board members on what you think might be the best approach for the different opportunities that might present itself in the LCD. And then finally, just some staffing changes. Adele has retired from her position as an assistant to the town clerk and also her role to the ZBA. So we'll be looking to fill those slots. Helene is also going to be stepping down from the planning board. So we may try to fill both slots with one part-time person to provide support and clerical support and just technical support to both the ZBA and the planning board in their work. And our new town clerk, Diane Bucco, she'll be looking to hire probably a part-time person then in the clerk's office. And we'll be giving you updates as we work on those replacements. So that's enough for me for now. And you can keep going with the rest of the meeting.
Okay, any questions on town administrator's report? There's one item I forgot to mention back when we were talking about the annual town meeting. Something occurred to me over the weekend, and that is we moved the meeting date out to June 21st. Last year, the municipal elections also moved. But this year they're not. And we typically, what we do is we have the municipal elections, and then the first board meeting after the municipal elections, which is usually essentially first meeting in June, we have our reorganizational meeting, elect a new chair, etc. And as I said at the beginning this year, it is not my intention to be the chair next year. So now the thing there is annual town meeting is going to fall after what would ordinarily be our reorganizational meeting. It's typically the chair that does the opening remarks, does the rest of the annual town report, etc. So, question is, what do board members think about postponing the reorganizational meeting until after the annual town meeting? And I remain in the chair position until that time. So we'd have the annual town meeting, and then the very first meeting after that, we do the reorganizational meeting. So how do board members feel about that concept? Would you prefer to go ahead and do the reorganizational meeting before? What's your preference?
I think we should move the reorganizational meeting to the last week in May of 2022.
2023.
Sorry, you knew that was coming.
Yeah.
All right, so board members are all right with that?
That a rhetorical question?
Honest question.
Thank you, Eli.
I think that makes sense, and
Yeah.
we thank you for your service as our chair. Or I do.
Absolutely.
All of us do.
Okay. All right. So I don't have any other members, as may have not have been reasonably anticipated by the day. We got to change that sentence. But we will be moving into executive session, not to move, return to open session. So I'll take a motion to move into executive session, not to return to open session under Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21, A, Reason 3. Hang on. This is never precise enough. To discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body and the chair so declares. And under Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, Section Reason 6, to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real estate if the chair declares that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the public body, and the chair does so declare.
So moved.
Yes.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, roll call vote. Ms. Harrison,
Yes.
Mr. Round,
Yes.
Ms. Jakes,
Yes.
Mr. Bodmer Turner,
Yes.
Mr. Bowling votes yes. I'm gonna request a 2-minute bio break while the rest of the people clear out of the meeting, and then we'll switch into executive. All right.
Sounds excellent.